Wow, good evening. Yeah, how creative we can be as human. It's really interesting. I want to talk about like the different ways of how we find creative ways to express our way, and it generates through our culture at times throughout the world. Um, for instance, you can see the different in every different fields as we gain more ideas that we somehow learn and generate from each other, then we transform those ideas into different matter in a different ways and different ideas. For instance, like through my time of growing up, I don't know if you understand or if you're I don't know if you know what a bearings is. So a bearings, I don't know if you're familiar with the bearings, but in different parts of the vehicles, you can find bearings in different areas of the engine. There is bearings, and so one of the things that I remember learning, I've seen done, and this is real interesting. To me at the time, it's really interesting. What we'll do is we'll cut the middle part of the tire. So, for instance, now you can overlap the tire. Now, like they refurbish the tire in a different ways, so where you can it's a form of like recycling the tires. So now what happened is we'd use the tire to wrap the bearings, and you may wonder to yourself, what am I talking about? Like, how do you use the tire to wrap bearings? No, it's just like this. Picture your car and the tire and the rim. So you'd have to visualize the bearings as the rim and visualize the tire, the middle section of the tire. That would be what you use to wrap the bearings to make wheels. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Cool Runnings before. That's the closest place I can set your imagination or set your vision, is to look at, and once you've seen that movie, if you watched that movie before, and you can see the way they practice bobsleigh. So the old, and this is really, I go back to saying, if you notice with some music, some songs, some people make a connection with the first line, the first verse. Some will make a connection with the chorus, and some will make a connection with the ending verse of the song. And that's not only music, that's in a lot of different aspect of our life. Even in a year time, some will find a job early in the year, some will not find a job until later on in the year, and so is their career. Some will find their career early start in life, and some will find a career in the mid part of life, and then some will find a career or find what they've been searching for at the very ending of their career. But you go back to ideas. So Now, I will get back to the bearings situation, but I want to take you for a minute. Ideas, some will find their ideas and find their dream at the very mid part of their life, and some will find their dream at the very ending, not ending, but once that character that they have slows down a little bit. Like when I mentioned man in the final fray, men fighting their final fight in achieving their career, their goals, their dream. And some will find their fight, that final part of life, it will just finally come together. And it's awesome to see that through different people's life. Now the bearings, I'm going to tell you about it, making the wheel from the tire and using the bearings. But I take it to Cool Runnings because you would watch the movie and only see the movie, but you could not see the other creative pieces in that movie. And even the producer and the directors, within there is so much going on with, for instance, there's going to be an automotive or some kind of vehicle in the movie. They don't really look at the movie and the vehicle going high speed and the speed, and their mind is there, but not necessarily on what makes the vehicle go, what makes it runs, what oil is in it at the time, or what fuel possible in it. It's just like, okay, there's going to be a brand, a year, model of the vehicle possible, and the mileage, and just the performance of what they're would like for it to do or perform. Now it's the same kind if you look at this movie called Cool Runnings, because the thing about this movie is the creative side of it is they had a cart that they sit in and drive and went off the hill to practice for the bobsled. Now those wheels on the cart was made out of the bearings in the middle of the tire, and it's not really easy to make these, because it's not easy to wrap a tire over a bearings. No, it's not, and have it to be stabled in the bearings, be stabled in the tire. So this takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of patience, and you have to literally center the bearings in the middle of the tire once you've cut the tire to your fitting. And so you have to take the middle section of the tire out and cut it about, depends on the size of the bearings too, about maybe a foot and a half, or maybe 2 feet, or maybe just 1 foot, so it can make a wrapping connection. And so you have to put your tire on a rim, and the same thing as the rim is the bearings. Now you might say to yourself, how does it hold? What holds the tire in? What holds the bearings in the tire? Well, nails. And so you have to make a point where the tire meets edge to edge once it makes that circle of a O around the bearings and sit properly. And the type of tire is really important. You cannot use, like, say, I'm going to use a tractor tire. No, you have to use a certain kind of tire to do that kind of, perform that kind of creative thinking process. And But as you can see, when I mentioned about the movie, you could watch the movie and not even have the slightest idea that the creative side to this movie was one of the most unique piece that took quite maybe a week or more to get those four wheels in the proper running condition and made, because it's handmade, and it's a really, it's not an easy procedure. Yeah, it's not an easy procedure. You literally have to put the bearings in the middle of the tire and then make sure that it's a tire that you want, and cut the middle section of the tire out, wrap it, and make sure it meets like a O around the bearings. It meets edge and edge. Then you have to use a nail, an hammer and a nail on both sides through the tire, bending the nails, and make sure that the bearings is straight in the tire. And you have to repeat this process right continuously around until it comes right back around to the and meet on the other side of the tire, which then you have to shape each sides off, and then you add a next layer of tire wrap around the first layer, and continue with the nails on both sides, and make sure it fits perfect, and make sure the bearings not moving. I mean, it's and it's a simple thing as the bearings. I mean, like through the different countries across the world, to use as delivery from their culture perspective. Some use a three wheels tricycle looking carriage. Everywhere in the world has their different logistic mobile transportation of early development in their history that was utilized to transport people back and forth before trains, before public chariots, between those times with donkey cart, horses, and before, within that period, every country has their own different way of transporting people, goods, and products before we advance to what we're at right now. So you can take in consideration the different mechanical creative aspect and creative mind it took to build those small those logistic way of transporting goods and products, and so in different areas of different parts of the world, there's different ways of, how would I say, like, for instance, throughout the world you have different, each country has a dish, an indigenous dish to their culture. Each nation has their, we refer to it as a national dish, as their a dish that each and everyone in that country or that part of the world know, this is our national dish. This is the dish that we eat. This is the food that we eat. This is a part of who we are. Within the same fields, within the same manner, we have there is the logistic way of the indigenous to there as well. And so even in the creating of more different vehicles from then on up, the idea was generated through the same culture minded and creative feeling aspect. It was the same way until they grasp ideas different from different parts of the world that would be like add to the puzzle and add to what they have there to generate and create a more familiar looking kind of logistic or carriage for human like you and myself. But every corners of the world has their own way, which is a part of their heritage, and it's the growth of their heritage through the creative ideas of people, men and women, that is indigenous to wherever in the world they live. And so those ideas are generated, and it's the same as music, it's the same as songs and food. And so with this part of the world, the humblest way of a logistic or moving or relocating different products and items, it appeared at time if the financial feel of using animals or any other sort without any energy, but the human energy, physical energy, would be in the idea that generates from the people there, that would identify a locking of transportation and a locking of moving products from one location to the other, and generating ideas of how to come up with a solution for these sort of services. And so from the earliest days of establishing ideas that would manifest itself throughout years and through different generations, and will still exist in the poorer section or parts of the world or the country that each and everyone's from. There will always be that poor neighborhood, that sort of logistic or service of transporting people and goods to the towns and the small shops around the corner or the avenue. Those will forever exist because it's a part of a culture and a part of your culture, and it also is a part of, it's good to have that, to sometimes remember what the culture is and about and what it stands for. So even though we generate new ideas and we keep growing as people and as one, and it's funny, if you go back to the word, you keep the poor poor and the rich stay rich. And on the controversial side of this situation, where the poor stay poor and the rich stay poor and the rich stay richer, the real contrast to this story is, and somehow the poor stay poor and maintain what the culture represents, because it's completely, it's it's like a sweet and sour situation at the same time, because you say the poor stay poor and the rich stay rich, and it's maintaining two different aspects of our existence as people in the economical dimension of our existence right now, because the rich stay richer, and it's like it's opening different gates and doors and avenues for creative and developing the world, and finding its place and staying ahead and staying and keeping and maintaining a certain ranking in the world. When the rich maintain, because from richness, it's gonna have to generate ideas of growth in economical perspective, and the money circulates into investing in different areas and avenues to maintain a rank in the world. And with the poor staying poor, it's such a sweet and sour situation, because without them, the culture itself would lose itself. The culture and what the world stands for in every parts of the world, in every corners of this world, whatever it stands for, it would lose its credibility if this sweet and sour situation isn't here and a part of our daily service together and as one, as people. So it takes you right back to the conversation of wherever in the world you're from or I'm from, we all had an existing way that an idea had formulated through someone to create some kind of logistic way of service to our small miniature community, and at the time our small miniature mind and our small tools and service there that we could use to utilize tools and ideas was at a miniature level at that time. But as we get more into our creative side of ideas and minds, and how the different ideas that comes together to teach us how to exercise the practice that we've been practicing for over years of using our minds as exercise, or we exercise our mind in learning, and that was just from years of the way they formulate the format of learning, which in my own view is just it's just my own view. It's a mind exercise. It's exercising your brains to exercise of different avenue and in different ways that we can learn, and it's still in discovery, because it's, for instance, investment is investing, or the platform of creating anything. It started out from a simple, so for instance, the exploration of this country and here that we are today, and it was just started as a simple voyage and become colonies to now 50, 49 for a bit in becomes a old 450. So it's the same way in learning and the exercising our creative mind, and it's just learning, and it started from the format that was here, of the format of school and how that format was, until we venture out into colleges, and we venture out into different higher learning ways and standard. Well, it's the same for everything else as food throughout your country, throughout the world, in the small towns, in the small city, in the small countryside. It's the same in with the same logistic way of transporting with this miniature ideas that we had at the time to utilize. Many use cows to transport, some use horse, some use donkeys, and then in different areas where that was not affordable, such as now, where is the step up from bus trains, and we transform into different ways to different equipment and different vehicle to taking you back to this bearings wheel made out of tire wheels that we didn't I wouldn't say there would be a set name for it really, because you just call it, a rat bearings with tire pretty much, and it's held together by nails, and it takes a good time, physical demanding, and it takes patience, it takes accuracy, and it takes measurement to make sure that you're putting in the bearings within this. Wrapping the tire over a bearings is not easy, and using nails to hold both sides into where you can eventually make four of these things that can withhold up to more than 200-300 pounds. 200-300 pounds. It has to be well put together, and so this is the former idea that man at the time there could generate those ideas to make that kind of wheel transportation. So imagine what if that mind that created a wheel out of bearings and used the tire to wrap it and the nails to hold it. It's a crime for that idea. That mind was not able to possibly exercise in greater development, because if that mind is able to use four, well, we want to say three things: the tire, the nails, and the bearings, to create a wheel that could transport more than 400 pounds and could transport more than 500 pounds. Because at that time, it wouldn't matter about the bearings nor the tire. It would matter about the chassis. It would matter about the kind of material that the weight could sit on. Because within the bearings and the tire could pretty much hold anything up to close to 1,000 pounds. So just imagine what that mind in that brain, with that mind, could develop with the proper tools, with the proper tools and a proper work environment. That is just a small piece in a small area of how creative one mind can be, and with different regions and terrains of different parts of the world, they are faced with different challenges through the temperature, through the setup of the setup of the time, the surface of the earth, and the different region of the world, and the different region or district or area of their parts of the world. It's completely different, and that's how the ideas are based and generate. When I say the 4 quarters of the year, and I say, oh, does that describe or have any kind of effect on how we perceive ourselves because of our habits, and what it has to do with our habits, or how we are as people, or our character. And it's be like, well, what kind of impact does that have on me? Well, what kind of impact does it really have? Well, it doesn't somewhat when you really identify, like, to yourself, think, well, it's the same way with the different regions of the world, and everything that we develop it with an idea of the length of time that it could possibly hold its life span, and it's too different. It's based on of our the parts of the world that we are. Because if you think to yourself, like, what am I really talking about here? In some, say for instance, coolant. There's a simple thing as coolant. Some parts of the world can use coolant, and some parts of the world don't really have to use coolant, even though the effect on it might be somewhat different. But was coolant invented based on different region of the world, and an idea that someone had that this could utilize or could work best? Was that idea that they came up with, was a generalized idea, or did just the world catch on to that idea and then find the way of making it work? But when you establish an idea like such, it's have to generate it from where you're from, and possible what the climate is, or what the sustainability of that. But before the sustainability of what it could be or do, there had to be something in between that for you to generate that idea, to use that as a fully service method that the rest of the world could catch on to and say, okay, this can work, and then it works. But it has to be when it was developed or created, because for instance, medicines, or like for a certain kind of human, for a certain, let's not put medicine in it, for food. Say for a certain diet, you work and eat a certain kind of meal. For certain medicines, you develop a certain kind of, for certain sickness, you develop a certain kind of disease. A certain disease, you develop a certain kind of medicine. Yes. So, and if you look on that in the aspect as what was it at that time that made that idea generate itself. So, and then it just like reach all corners of different parts of the world that you can somehow just be a part of and understand that this is going on right there. But anyway, I am grateful for this time. I appreciate each and every one who's out there that listens and is a part of this. I wish I could go on a little bit more, but this time I think we have to wrap it up for now. But I can definitely get back to wrapping the bearings at some point. But I would have to get you a picture of it and just put it there for you. But from a visual perspective, you could picture like a regular bearings that would sit up well the middle of the tire, maybe 4 inches across, 4 inches in width, and maybe a foot in length, depends on the size of the bearings anyway, and with nails on both sides just to hold, just like anything else. If you can look on the rim of the tire, and the rim, and the rim has both sides that the tire sits in and hold once that's filled with air, which is the same kind of situation, but this is not the two sides of the rim. Is not, you have to picture that as the nails that hold in that tire, and to hold the tire completely in, you have to kind of bend the nail into a like a triangle, or like bend it into a V shape back from where it's coming through for it to just hold into that. So but this is basically saying the idea is that you and I can sometimes use to change the world. It's really, really amazing. It's really a challenge at times, and I admire like really people who just go. I mean, I'm happy to be here to watch actors from different parts of life act, and engineering from different world engineers, and people with communication skills, and all those different automotives. Just see those grow and understand all the hard work that they really have to put in for these business to grow like they grow. And it's not easy, and one of the things is like, when you see people from, when I say people, all corners of the world have somehow find themselves here, and I would say to myself, what percentage of those people will eventually make it to a creative level, and to where they can create and design and manufacture products that can sell to the world? It takes a good 2 or 3 generations for that to happen. Besides just the mom and the pop restaurants that's on the side of the road, or the small business that's just down the avenue, or it takes a good 3-4 generations. So when I said, when you look, if you're ever from a different part of the world and you're somehow on a Greyhound bus, and when you're on the Greyhound bus and you look behind you and you see people like yourself from all sections of the world, and you ask yourself this question: how many of those people will be a pillar of their community, or be a success in the field or in the dream that they're here for, or they're about to pursue? How many of those people that, if you ever look in of the bus that you riding in and say ground, and you just get off the bus and you just flew in from wherever in the world, and you see like just 10 different nation behind you, or somehow in the same bus going maybe 500 miles away to somewhere to perform the skill that you had brought here to do, or that sort of thing. And you can look to yourself, to your left or your right, or look, and these are some of the questions that you can possibly ask yourself. It's like, how many of these people like yourself that's on a journey for themselves, for their family, or just the exploration of what life can possibly be, how many of them will be a success? How many of them will be a corner, or it's an interesting question, and it's really nice to be able to see that point, and as myself, I can only admire someone out there like myself that is in a time where they can pursue their life, pursue their dream, and pursue the goal that they were here searching for. Was sometimes engage in school, besides the restaurants, or just the normal cleaning service, can find themselves in a community service that represents a part of a community. And it's the mindset also, because once that mindset is changed, and now you can somehow embody yourself in a community, then having a dividing your life between two homes or two worlds, then the goal or success, it's more achievable in a smaller amount of time than. But it's amazing that that's the possibility there is like that. But it's a journey and a story within a story itself, and I am more than happy to be a part of it, because we all are a part of it. We just I don't want to say reincarnation, but it's a cycle that we all go through. And so when I refer back to even the city, or in the city where you think everyone is actually from the city, not necessarily. It's just everyone is from everywhere that go there, because we all change worlds, and we change states, and we change different parts of our life. My name is Taz Fireworks. I would really like to hang out with you sometimes more about there's like some people sometimes, some people that you can just sit there and you can just listen to them all night. And if I'm that kind of person,
it's time for me to lock up tonight.
Alright. Well, anyway, I hope you have a wonderful night. Okay, thanks everyone again.